Okay, good morning. Welcome to the fourth session of Scientific Communication final presentation session. We're going to have 6 presenters that will be talking about their topic today. We're going to have Sondang, and then
Yes, sir.
Yoel, and then Iis Rohmatin, and then followed by Samuel Eric, Muhammad Lutfi Aditya, and then finalized by Fadil Raushan Fikar in today's sessions. The second presenter that already scheduled for today, Alika, has difficulties in attending the class because she had an appointment with a doctor. So without further ado, I would like to invite Sondang Bulan Simarmata to prepare her presentation and then be ready to begin her talk.
Yes, sir.
Sir, Mr. Hari,
Yes,
I want
yes.
to inform that for the attendance in the 6, I think it's get the wrong hour.
Oh, okay. I will
Yes.
fix
Okay.
the SIX later on. Thank you for
Okay,
informing
thank
me
you,
about
sir.
it. Well,
Sir, are my
yes,
PowerPoint?
yes. I can. We can. I guess everybody could see Sondang's PowerPoint on their screen.
So I will start.
Yes, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Wait, sir. Okay. And my voice. Can you hear my voice?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay. So good morning, Mr. Hari and all my friend.
Good morning.
Let me introduce myself. So my name is Sondang Bulan Simarmata with student number 1021704 and 3. So in this session, I will bring topic about micro tremor application in determining amplification of the subsurface layer. Okay, next. So the outline of this presentation is I will talking about the background of this topic and then the definition of microtremor and then definition of amplification and then the analysis of HPSR and then the method of HPSR and the result of microtremor measurement in Bandung and Surabaya and then the last is the conclusion. So we talk about the background of this topic. We know natural disaster like earthquake cannot be avoided. So all we can do just to reduce the impact of damage caused by natural disaster death. So when an earthquake occurs, vibration and shock of varying magnitude. Vibration and shock will have an impact on the damage to the infrastructure that has been built. The step that we can take to minimize this damage caused by earthquake is to set the mitigation plan and the good regional planning in accordance with the characterization of the soil layer. So I will introduce the microtremor, which the microtremor is the method can be obtained characteristic soil, inform the amplification value, natural frequency, and then the last is the shear wave velocity. But in this presentation, I will only talk about the amplification. Okay, next. So we talk about the definition of microtremors. So the microtremors is a very small soil vibration. Microtremors come from the word micro and tremor, that are continuously sourced from various kinds of vibrations such as traffic, wind, human activity, and etc. Okay, let's talk about definition of amplification. So according to Nakamura, the value of amplification relate to the contrast ratio of the impedance of the surface layer. And then we move to the analysis of HVSR. The HVSR method is based on the processing of microthermal recording that result from the interpretation of the HVSR function. Curve can provide an estimate of energy distribution at a certain frequency range where the dominant energy reflects the frequency of resonance of rock structure. Okay, we talk about the method of HVSR. So actually, in analyzing of microtremor, we have FK analysis, we have SPIC analysis, and we have HVSR analysis. But in this presentation, I will only talk about HVSR analysis. So the HVSR method is done by estimate the ratio of Fourier spectrum, the vertical and the horizontal component. HVSR record on the ground is used for geological characterization in the local area. In this presentation, the data will take in Bandung and Surabaya. In Bandung will be carried out 97 measuring point, and in Surabaya will be 39 point in Eastern Surabaya. So the first step we can do it is data acquisition. And then after that, we can processing data and we can do FFT to convert the time domain to frequency domain. Data processing and FFT we will doing in software named GFC. The output from this data processing is we get the amplification value and the natural frequency. But if we do some inversion, we will get the shear wave velocity. Okay, next. So this is the result of micro tremor measurement in Bandung. So this is the map of Bandung amplification distribution. If you look, this is 4 area, the dark green, the light green, the yellow, and the last is the red one. So the result of microtremor data processing in Bandung City have a value amplification range in 2.1 to 17. The dark green is contain the amplification value 0 to 3, and then the light green is contain the amplification value 3 to 6, and then the yellow one contain the amplification value 6 to 9, and then the last, the red one, the area red is contain the amplification value up to 9. Okay, so I will show you 3 spectrum HVSR. This is the spectrum HVSR in Hargamana in this area, and then the second is spectrum HVSR Asia Africa in the western, and then the last is spectrum HVSR Gede Bage in the southeastern. So we look the one. Okay, spectrum HVSR of Hargamana, we take this peak and we know the amplification factor value is in 5.3 with the frequency dominant in 4.04. So the response spectrum of HVSR in rocky area in the north show the value of the amplification factor that vary from low to high. So we look in the north area, light green, there are red one, there are yellow, varied. And then the second, we look spectrum HVSR Asia Africa have amplification factor value is 4.1 with frequency dominant 0.88. And then the last is spectrum HVSR of Gede Bage in the red area in here, Gede Bage have amplification value is 16.5. So yeah, like this. And then we move to result Surabaya. This is the map of Surabaya amplification distribution. And this is the table of the output from the data processing amplification and frequency natural. We look from this table, the amplification value is in range in 2 until 8.4. So yeah, from the HVSR analysis obtain natural cell frequency and amplification at 39 measurement point in the Surabaya area. Okay, we talk about the conclusion. So the conclusion is the value of strengthening factor for the Bandung area resulting from microtremor data processing range from 2.1 to 17. This value indicates the level of vulnerability relative to the danger of earthquake. And then the second conclusion is from the research area along the eastern part of Surabaya to northern Surabaya has a high amplification. So it can be said that the area is vulnerable damage area from the earthquake. That's my presentation. Yeah, any question for me?
Okay, thank you, Sandang. We have time for 3 questions for Sandang. Is there any question from the audience related to the topic?
Sir, I want to ask some Sandang.
Yes, please.
Okay, Sandang. I want to ask you about what are the advantage of your methods rather than the other method. Thank you.
Thank you, Arta. Okay, thank you for the question. So I will answer the question. What the advantage of the microtremor compared the other method? I think the microtremor has advantage because the microtremor make use the passive seismics, not the active seismics. That means there is no need for an external energy source like an active seismic. For example, like we do in MRSW, use active seismic. We use hit by hammer, like that. I think, yes.
Is that answering your question, Arta?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So that is one advantage of using the passive seismic is that we don't need to have artificial source that you employ in the field, and it will make the cost of your measurement less than the active one. Okay. More question from the audience.
Sir, I have question.
Yes, please.
Okay, Iis, Sandang, what can be interpreted from the map for distribution of value amplification of Bandung?
From this amplification value Bandung distribution, I think we come back to this map. So in this map, we can see that we can get some information about area that are prone to earthquake, wave strengthening, and area that are relatively safe to develop. Yes, I think we look the area like green and dark green, that's the area can we develop to like hospital, construction of hospital facility. But in this area, in the red area, I think that are the area have a level vulnerability. Yes. So in red area, I think that's not recommend for develop. Yeah, I think like that. Yes, sir.
Okay, there is one interpretation from Sondang related to the vulnerability map that is shown in the figure at the moment. But the fact that many governmental building and also private building develop currently in the Gadebagi area, okay, also in the Margahayu and also in the Cileunyi and I forgot the region close, or in the Riung Bandung area where they have I think they have 30 level of apartments. I think there are 2 or 3 30 level apartment and also one public university, the UIN Sunan Gunung Jati also there, and also several hospitals also built in the Gadebagi area. So it doesn't mean that development should be stopped there, but they need to have a more earthquake strength level to be increased rather than the other area. So the quality of the structure needs to be more powerful than the other region, and they need to think about how to use more robust constructions in order to make the earthquake hazard becomes minimum. That's the task for the engineers. But we scientists or the geoscientists provide the map so that the people who works in government and also in public policy or public administration, etc., or in urban planning could think twice or thrice when they're going to develop the area. Because and Sondang, do you know why does Gadebagi, Margahayu, and the southeastern part of Bandung is more vulnerable in terms of geologically? Reasons why it is more prone to have?
Because Basin Bandung, sir?
Not quite. Not quite. It is due to the fact that Bandung Basin is the primary or the not the direct reason why the area is prone to the earthquake, but it is also related because if you talk about basin, it means that the Gadebagi and also in the southern of Bandung area is the base of that basin. Okay, it's the base of that basin, so that all of the sediments will accumulate it there, and due to the existence of sediments, it means that people will use that for crops, for rice field, etc., and so on, and therefore the rigidity and also the strength of that sediment is less than the igneous rock that is more prone in the northwest or central part of Bandung. So that's why when earthquake hit Bandung, especially high magnitude earthquake, when it's traveling to the Bandung to the southern Bandung area, due to the strength of the sediments on the southern part of Bandung is more or less than the northern area, it means that the amplification potential will be higher. That's the reason. Okay, thank you, Sondang, for her presentation. We should move on to the second presenter of today, which is Yoel, where Yoel is going to talk about handwriting recognition with convolutional neural network. Is Yoel in the classroom at the moment? Is there any word from Yoel that everybody knew? Okay.
I think for this section, he didn't come yet because the
Okay.
no.
Okay. So if we are moving on to if we move on to presentation, does anybody have objection to it or not? Or would you like to be the second presenter of today if Yoel is not ready yet?
Okay.
Hello, Is?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it okay for you to be the second presenter of today's session?
Okay.
Okay, so I think Is ready to present her works on biogas study utilization to analyze efficiency of genset engine. So is it okay for you to present now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. I think the sound of your voice is a little bit low, so could you speak up a little bit so that everybody could hear? And then you may start whenever you're ready for your presentation.
Okay. Okay, bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rahmatin. I am from Physics of Earth and Complex System Research Group, Faculty of Mathematics and Natural Sciences, Institut Teknologi Bandung. Today, I will present about study of biogas utilization to analyze the efficiency of genset engine with Venturi nozzle modification. Okay, for the first, we will talk about the introduction of my paper. The existence of fossil energy sources like oil, natural gas, and coal is diminishing over time. And we know that burning fossil energy can cause global warming and a greenhouse effect. So new green renewable energy resources are needed to replace fossil energy sources. Indonesia is an agricultural country, and one of the agricultural sector is the farm. And the waste of the capital could be harnessed into biogas, which is a renewable energy sources. Biogas is of high caloric value, hence a potential fuel for generating power. And what is biogas? Biogas is the mixture of gases produced by the breakdown of organic matter, such as food scraps, and animal waste in the absence of oxygen. The process called anaerobic digestion. This is biodigester. Biodigester is used as a place for the fermentation process of organic material with the help of bacteria in anaerobic condition. After approximately 20 until 25 days, it will form maximum biogas with the degree of acidity or pH is between 7.5 until 8.5, and the optimum temperature is at 30 until 35 centigrade. Biogas can be used as vehicle fuel and electricity generation or power generation. Sorry. And then the biogas waste or slurry can be used as an organic fertilizer that needs by plants. And then we will talk about the composition of biogas. Biogas is made up of different concentration of gas such as methane, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, hydrogen sulfide, and oxygen. And the main component of biogas are methane and carbon dioxide. With volume of methane is 50 until 75, and the carbon dioxide, the volume is 25 until 50%. Biogas energy is determined by the heat value of methane. The methane can be used to be energy of biogas. And then biogas fermentation stage. There are 4 stages of biological and chemical reaction from the anaerobic digestive process of biogas. The first is hydrolysis. Hydrolysis is a process in which complex organic molecules break into simple molecules such as sugars, amino acid, and fatty acid. And then the second is acidogenesis. Acidogenesis stage, there is a breakdown of organic compound into low organic acid of molecule, such as organic acid, alcohol, hydrogen, carbon dioxide, and ammonia. And then, and the third is acetogenesis. Acetogenic bacteria will convert short and alcohol compound into acetic acid, hydrogen, and carbon dioxide. And the last stage is methanogenesis. This stage, methane and carbon dioxide were produced. In this research, modified genset, a modification of the study is that it convert a generator with 2 kilowatt that fuel gasoline to a generator that combusts just pure biogas. Biogas nozzle Venturi modified nozzle are used to replace gasoline nozzle or industrial nozzle. The modified nozzle Venturi biogas is simple cylinder, no ventilation to keep the pressure carburetor on. Then another modification is one end of Venturi nozzle made to turn against the piston. The fluid flow rates on carburetor Venturi. This is a Venturi meter. Venturi meter is one of the tools that can be used to measure the rate of flow and fluid with the principle of the Bernoulli equation. This is the Bernoulli equation. The Venturi carburetor consists of a pipe with an inlet and a throat in the middle and an outlet. So when the control valve opens, the air will enter to the Venturi carburetor. Air speed will increase into the throats into the throat and become maximum. So the pressure on throat part will be lower than the outside air pressure. As a result, biogas will enter the venturi carburetor and mix with the air, and they will next to lead to the and they will mix and next to lead to the machine. This is in line with the principal Bernoulli equation, which states that the increasing fluid velocity will lower than pressure of the fluid flow. And then the volume flow rate is the volume of fluid that passes through a particular surface per unit of time, with V is volume of fluid and T is time, and A is the broad channel and V is the average velocity of the fluid, and the mass flow rate is the mass of the substance passing through a particular surface per unit of time, with rho is fluid density and A is a broad channel view, and V is volume of fluid, and Q is volume flow rate. And then we will talk about the efficiency of the modified genset. Generator efficiency is proportion between power output or power coming out of the system and the Q input, or the power coming from the fuel into the engine. Q input is biogas heat input and P output is output power. And then the output power produced from the generator could be calculated using this formula. P output equals voltage multiplied by current. And then biogas heat input is determined by the caloric value of the methane contained with biogas. And lower heating value is an amount of hot energy emitted from the process of burning up 1 kilogram of fuel, on the assumption that all water products produced by heat in the form of steams. And the magnitude of the fuel color would be equivalent to the absolute price of the combustion enthalpy, and equal to the LHV or lower heating value. The magnitude of the fuel color or biogas heat input equivalent to the mass flow rate multiplied by lower heating value. Biogas heat input is the input energy per time of biogas fuel, which is multiplied by mass flow rate and LHV. And then the efficiency of biogas genset pertain to ability of generator to convert energy that come from biogas fuel to motion energy that can be converted into electric energy, multiplied by 100%. And then this result, the efficiency of machine is increasing. Efficiency of machine is increasing as flow of volume of the biogas fuel correlates to diameter of nozzle venturi, with increased 3 until 6.5. The engine efficiency value comes at 14.89 until 43.90. And this conclusion is the physical parameters that affect biogas heat input are mass flow rate or of biogas, and lower heating value. while the physical parameters that affect the genset performance are voltage and current generated by the generator. The value of modified biogas genset efficiency obtained by 14.89 until 43.9%. Thank you for your attention. Any question?
Okay, thank you, Yes, for delivering presentation about biogas utilization. Is there any question from the audience? We have time for 3 questions.
Sir, I want to ask.
Yes, please.
Why do biogas components such as nitrogen, hydrogen, and oxygen not affect biogas energy?
Okay. Wait.
Okay, after Khaled's questions, Iqbal will ask about the topic as well.
Okay, the other component such as nitrogen, hydrogen, and hydrogen sulfide and oxygen also have energy content, but it has no effect in the combustion process. So in fact, they would absorb energy from the process of burning methane. That is the question. That is the answer for your question.
Okay, is there any comments from Muhammad Khaled about his explanation?
No. Okay. Thank you for the answer.
Okay.
Okay, so that we can move to Iqbal's question.
Yes. So in the composition of biogas, there is carbon dioxide, which is still, I think it's still high. So is there any room improvement for biogas to reduce the carbon dioxide? Thank you.
Okay. The carbon dioxide is corrosive for the engine. So actually, the carbon dioxide is reduced to the engine with purification process.
So do you think there is a way to improve the reduction of CO2 waste from this system, do you think?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat?
So since the amount of carbon dioxide is still exists in the system, so what do you think on how we can get the amount of CO2 is reduced in the system? What kind of improvement that we can apply? If you knew, if you can suggest one method.
Before the combustion process, we will reduce carbon dioxide first and hydrogen sulfide first by purification process. So the carbon dioxide will not enter to the combustion processor.
Okay, so it's basically the material. Okay, we need to purify the material first so that the amount of CO2 become less, so that when it enters the system, the amount of excess CO2 that can come out from the system is going to be reduced as well. Okay, thank you, Is, for delivering the presentation related to the biogas applications. So that we can move on to the third presenters of today, which is Samuel Eric, which is going to talk about analysis of gross domestic product growth from Indonesian Stock Exchange data, year 2015 to 2018, using minimum spending 3 methods. Okay, Samuel Eric is present at the moment, initializing the PPT.
Can you see my PPT, sir? Yes.
All right.
Did you make it full screen?
Wait a second. Wait. All right.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. I will share my study
Morning.
results in a form of 15 minutes presentation. My name is Samuel Eric. I'm from Physics Department. My registration number is 102171100. I would like to share my presentation titled Analysis on the Gross Domestic Product Growth from IDX data year 2015 until 2018 using minimum spanning tree method. All right. On October 20, 2014, Joko Widodo officially served as a president of the Republic of Indonesia for one period until 2019. And its president had political promises during the campaign period. And one of his promises is to increase gross domestic product growth. The promise realization process was carried out by making RPJMN, Rancangan Pembangunan Jangka Menengah Nasional, from 2015 until 2019. And RPJMN was regulated by Peraturan Presiden Republik Indonesia nomor 2 tahun 2015. And as you can see in the table, the estimation is in 2015 we will have 5.8%, and in 2019 we will have 8%, but the GDP growth achieved was not in line with RPJMN. Based on data from the World Bank, GDP growth rose from 5.01% in 2014 to 5.17% in 2018, but there was a decrease in 2015 of 4.88%. So what is GDP? In macroeconomic, GDP is one important indicator related to the economic development of a country in a certain period. GDP is defined as the amount of added value of goods and services produced by various business units in a country, and it can be calculated by production approach. The calculation is based on production process of companies from various business actors. There are business sectors contribute on GDP calculation, such as agriculture, mining, industry, etc. We go to the stock. I will define the index sectoral. One of the stock indices in Indonesia stock is index sectoral. The stock index publishes stock price of various business sector, and the financial performance of business unit is observed from the stock price movement in the stock market. And as you can see in the figure, the stock price in the stock market always changes, and the price movement is fluctuative and has a random pattern. Therefore, stock market has a behavior as a complex system. Complex system, if you don't know, a complex system is formed from interaction between system components that forms a new collective behavior. While econophysics is a branch of complex system physics that applies physical theories to economic problem. In these two decades, physicists were interested in the complexity of the network and apply it to the stock market. For example, Zhang and his partner did research of the stock network, which they compare with the economic condition at that time. For the research on network topology that compared to economic condition is done by Singh Hao. He formed the stock network of the network topology in stock market in India. Singh Hao found that economic conditions were described by linking the rise in the value of GDP growth rate to stock network topology. And in this research, I will use a minimum spanning tree method, and we need to know about centrality. Centrality parameter is an indicator of how important a node is in the network. And in this research, author determines the importance of stocks in the stock network by using centrality parameters. The aim of this research is to mapping stock network of Indonesia sectoral stock from 2015 to 2018 to obtain the connection between gross domestic product growth and stock network topology, and to determine the sectoral stock which has strong impact each year from 2015 to 2018. Let's go to the materials and methods which need to make this research. Index sectoral, there are 9 sector indices in Indonesia stock market. As a part of index sectoral, we have agriculture, mining, etc. And we can shorten the name, and usually we use a code name to mention this sector index. And yeah, if you don't know about close price represents the last price of a stock during a regular trading session. And price return is the logarithmic rate of return on investment portfolio. And you can calculate the return of stock loss using the following formula. RIT is ln PIT plus delta T min ln PIT. And the price return value is transformed to a matrix formed by collecting time series of stock price returns. And the price return matrix is processed to get the correlation matrix, and you can calculate the correlation between stock returns by following this formula. And the value of CIG is used to construct correlation between matrix C of size nxn. Maybe I will next. And we have to know distance matrix. Distance matrix is used for constructing the minimum spanning tree. The individual element of this metric is interpreted as the distance between any two individual stocks. And to calculate the distance matrix, we can using the following formula. And minimum spanning tree consists of 2 parts. There are graph and spanning tree. Graph is a structure that is built by interconnecting of nodes and edges, while spanning tree is connected cyclic subgraph containing all nodes of graph. So what is minimum spanning tree? Minimum spanning tree is a spanning tree of a weighted graph with minimum total weight. This is used to construct stock network that has strongest correlation between stock indices. In this research, MST is constructed from distance matrix D as the weights. Network topology, it can be depicted as a layout of the interconnection between different components of a given system. And there are many types of network topology, like bus, chain, ring, star, tree, and mesh-like topologies. In this research, we only have two type of network topology, such as chain-like and star-like. And in Zhang and his partner research, Zhang and his partner research discovered that the stock network topology could represent the economic condition at that time. In their research, the star-like topology associated with low volatility economic, and chain-like topology associated with high volatility economic, and you can call economic crisis. Another research is done by Singhal. Singhal discovered that economic conditions were described by linking the rise in the value of gross domestic product. And in his research, the star-like topology described economic growth, which is indicated by the increase in GDP growth rate, while the chain topology associated with there is a decrease in GDP growth rate. And in this research, the form stock network using MST is analyzed to obtain economic movement by comparing to the GDP growth rate. We have to know about centrality measure. Centrality measure is used to summarize the information contained in MST stock network. And in this research, we have 3 centrality parameters, and they are discussed to determine the relative importance for its particular stock in the network. We have degree centrality, we have between centrality and closeness centrality. This is the formula to calculate the centrality parameter. I will next. And this is the example figure or picture while we make a centrality parameter. Maybe we can go to results and discussion. The MST stock networks of index sectoral networks from 2015 until 2018 are constructed by using MST method, and they are constructed. It is constructed by using MATLAB and GPI softwares, GEPHI. You can see the result in this figure. In that figure, the sectors are colored in different colors, and you can see in 2015 the stock network topology has a chain-like topology, and in 2016 until 2018 has a star-like topology. And when stock networks from 2016 to 2018 have a star topology, you can see that GDP growth is increased, but in where the stock network topology has a chain-like, the GDP growth decreased. And we can see the picture ini. We can see the picture, and this is a centrality of Indonesia stock networks 2015 to 2018. And the centrality parameter is used to determine the sector which has strong impact each year. And from this figure, the sector which has the highest degree centrality value is finance. Because if you see in this picture, finance has 5 value because this sector has more links than other sector, and finance is linked with another 5 sector: property, basic industry, construction, and etc. So finance has a highest value from the centrality parameters. From this picture, the sector which has the highest value of between centrality is a sector which is success to act like a bridge that is passed by other notepad. And from this,
I'm sorry to interrupt you. You have 1 minute to conclude your presentation.
Right. Maybe I will go to conclusion. So this is the table. We can see that finance sector has the highest value in 3 centrality parameters in 2015. And in this research, author found that stock network depicts economic condition, and stock network topology has relation with GDP growth rate. The star-like topology depicts economic growth, which is indicated by the increase in GDP growth, while the chain-like topology depicts slow economic movement, which is indicated by the decrease in GDP growth. And based on 3 centrality parameters, the sectors which have the strong impact each year from 2015 to 2018 are finance in 2015, basic industry in 2016, finance again in 2017, and property in 2018. So this is my reference. And thank you for your attention. I would like to invite you to ask a question if it needed. Any question?
Okay, is there any question for Samuel Eric from the audience? We have time for 2 quick questions for this topic. Okay, if there are no question, I would like to ask Eric about how do you think about the manufacture sector, which is kind of becomes the main point of Jokowi's economic development in the first term. So, do you think that the study here is not showing that the manufacture sector is not the importance, not become the main factor of Indonesian economy based on the study of the IDX on your presentation here?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, according to my study, I don't see the significances of manufacturing sector to increase GDP growth, and yeah, maybe we can say that the program that Jokowi made for manufacture sector to the importance thing in Indonesian, it doesn't work well. So yeah, if as I study in this topic, I see maybe the sector has highest impact in GDP growth is finance. It is not manufacture. So yeah, maybe I don't know why manufacturers sector doesn't seem surprisingly or not, or why or what. Yeah, maybe this is my answer. Yeah, we
Yeah,
can.
it's okay because you're not an economist, so further study needs to be done in order to look out why does the manufacture sector is not become the main points in the that is shown from the study. Do you think that companies like Gojek and also the financial technology, okay, the financial technology company also show their strength in the 5 years of the study?
Yeah.
Or is it already included in the finance sector?
Actually, the financial technology in whose Gojek use is out of topic because I only analysis financial sector in stock market, but and
which is
as we know,
basically from banks and financial institution.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Conventional financial institution. Okay. Thank you, Samuel Eric, for your presentation. Due to the time, we need to move on to our fourth presenter of today, which is Muhammad Lutfi Aditya.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
So while Lutfi Aditya is preparing for his presentation, I would like to remind everybody about the assessment sheet for each presenter that you need to fill, and then don't forget to sign up for your attendance on the SIX systems. And also please look out for the LMS of our course, because the dates of your assignment datelines and the folder that you need to upload is already present in the LMS. Okay, without further ado, I would like to move the floor to Lutfi Aditya to start his presentation.
Is my screen already show up, sir?
Yes. Perfectly.
Uh, yeah,
Okay, I
I'm
can hear
from
you.
physical in nuclear physics in biophysics group. Today I want to present about my final paper presentation titled Identity. Hello. Sir, this is uh, my
Yes, your screen is fine. We just cannot hear your voice. Or you can turn off your camera, your on-cam camera. You can turn it off because probably the transmission is not.
Is it my scroll up? Okay. Is Mr. Hari freeze in anyone?
Yes.
In everyone?
Yes, yes.
Hello. Can anyone
Hello, hello.
respond me?
Hello. Hello. We can hear you, Lutfi.
Hello, Lutfi. Hello.
I'm sorry, maybe because in my screen, Mr. Hari is freezing.
Oh, okay.
Okay, let me restart it.
Okay, can you hear my voice?
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Hi,
I'm Muhammad Lutfi Aditya. I'm from Physical Medic and Nuclear Physics in Biophysics Group. Today, I want to present about my final paper presentation titled Identification of Pneumonia on X-ray Thorax using Convolutional Neural Network. So this is the outline. I'm gonna start with a introduction and experiment method. Then I will go into data and result, and then I conclude the experiment. When we talk about pneumonia, we will think about lung, organ of respiration. Pneumonia is the condition of inflammation or infection of the lung caused by virus, bacteria, fungi, etc. To diagnose whether a patient has pneumonia or not, pneumonia since 2015 until now, there has been an increase in average due to change in number of estimated cases from 10% to 3.55%. To diagnose whether the patients have pneumonia or not, doctor use an X-ray images to identify patient's health. For example, I have these two images from my dataset downloaded in medley.com. From these two images, we wonder which one is pneumonia and which one is normal. Of course, the left image is normal and the other one is pneumonia, if you look closely. But let's check with this. One. Can it be guessed whether which one is normal? Both are actually from pneumonia dataset. The point is, even these two pictures look alike with previous normal images. We get to know that it is hard for a doctor to identify checking patient's history without checking patient's history health. Along with the time, we acknowledge about machine learning. Now we try to use CNN or convolutional neural network, one of deep learning methods, to try to help doctor in identifying extrathoracic images, since it's CNN function in image recognition neural network. Now, here's a CNN architecture. We start with an image input, and then image will get initialized with several hidden layer, dimensional matrix like conventional layer with ReLU, etc. The depth in the 3D matrix is the RGB color value in input image. Here's the flowchart of my experiment. I'm going to start and loading dataset, then train with model and analyzing my model. And then if the model start to overfit, I will change the model variable. And if not, I'm going to save the model and start to going the prediction. So this is the graph with an accuracy and loss with a chance of epoch. It's a normal. We get to know that the graph is increasing with the chance of epoch and with the accuracy. Here's the thing. The graph with value accuracy is showing in weird graph because the up and down graph with an increase of epoch. We know that from this two graph, we know that our model is start to overfit. What does it mean? It means that our model is not trying to predict, but instead it will just remembering the input that our data training instead of prediction. So to change the variable, I vary the difference with very dense convolutional layer and nodes from 1 to dense and 1 to 3 convolutional and 32, 64, and 128 nodes. From this variation, I choose to best model, which is one convolutional with 64 nodes and 0 dense, and 3 conventional 32 nodes and 1 dense. Now start to use my model to predict new random dataset with total 3,270 normal images and 4,657 image pneumonia image. Here's the result on the table 1 and table 2, which the table 1 is normal data set prediction, with the correct prediction is 2,265 and with the total image is 3,270. The accuracy is 69.27%. While the other variety, it shows the accuracy is 77.16%. Now we take a look in the pneumonia dataset prediction table. It shows that the first variation, it shows the accuracy is 93.3%, and the other variation is 87.03%. Okay, here's the conclusion. Normal patients, X-ray prediction image shows the better result in accuracy with 3 convolutional layers, 32 nodes, and 1 dense model. While pneumonia patients image X-ray images prediction shows a better result in accuracy with the 1 convolutional layers, 64 nodes, and 0 dense. And we get to know the model will start to overfit in epoch 7, because in the previous image we see that the graph in value epoch loss and accuracy is getting weird in epoch number 7. Thank you. Is there any question?
Okay, is there any question from the... Okay, so is there any question from the audience for Lutfi?
Sir, I would like to ask
Yes,
a question.
please.
Okay, thank you, Lutfi, for your presentation. It is an interesting topic. I would like to ask you about what is the meaning of 0 dense and 1 dense? What is the difference? And can you briefly explain it to us? What does it mean? Thank you. The dense word in your research. Hello, can you hear my voice? Hello?
Hello, Lutfi.
I'm sorry. I can't hear Mr. Hari.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello.
Should I rejoin the Zoom?
Lutfi, do you hear
I
any
couldn't hear anyone
questions
actually.
from Yoel?
I guess the problem is not from me.
Yes, I think it's problem of him.
Okay, could Yoel, could you write the questions on the chat
I'm sorry,
room
I don't hear anything.
instead?
Okay, sir. Okay.
Okay, look on your chat, please. Lutfi, could you hear me?
Oh, for your presentation, could you briefly explain what does the dense in your research? What is the difference between 0 dense and 1 dense? The dense, it means the dense layer, how Okay, next please. I said the hidden layer in convolutional neural network is three-dimensional matrix, which I use the dense is. I mean, I said that the matrix. The hidden layer in convolutional neural network matrix. It's three-dimensional matrix, right? The dense is mean the depth. I use the depth. Thank you for your question.
Okay, for those who have questions for Lutfi, you can type it in the chat section because I guess Lutfi could not hear us at this moment.
I'm not sure I get the question, sir. Whether there any difference between left or right lung in term? Wait. I'm not sure I know. I know about the question. Are there any difference between left or right lung in terms of convolutional networks? I don't think the CNN works just to calculate the value in each pixels of the image input, sir. Yes. I think because the CNN model just calculate the is there any difference left or right side of the lung on the convolution? I don't. Actually I don't check if there any difference between lung and right between the image because I use decision model that it's only calculated its value of the image input. So I don't check if there are any difference.
Okay. Okay. Okay, I guess Lutfi has already answered
Sorry with the
Yuel's and mine's questions.
Obstacle I undergo.
Yeah, it's okay.
Sorry. How to stop?
Well, that's what. Well, this is things that could happen during presentation, so that's why we need to allocate some time to overcome this. Troubles. So, as said in the chat room, we would like to move on to the fifth presenters of the day, which is 4, 5 is Fadil Roshan Fikir, talking about implementation of artificial neural network potential for atomistic material simulation. Okay, we would like to thank Lutfi Aditya for giving his presentation on the pneumonia detection using convoluted image, and then hopefully there will be no problem for the next presenter, so that we could end the session before 11. Okay, whenever you're ready, Fadil, you may start your presentation.
Hello, sir. Can you hear my voice?
Yes. Yes, hello.
Hey, good morning, sir, and everybody who is watching.
Okay, good morning.
My name is Fadil Raushan Fikar, and today I will present you my research topic, which is implementation of artificial neural network potentials for atomistic material simulation. This is the outline of the presentation. I will start with background and then move on to basic theory, result, and finally conclusion. So why did I choose this topic? Society is in a constant quest for new advanced materials, whether it be a material harder than diamond, more conductive than silver, or more insulating than aerogel.
I'm sorry, Fadil, could you speak up a little bit? Because your
Hello?
voice is too soft. Yeah, that tone. Okay, perfect.
Hello, sir.
Yeah. Please continue.
Okay. So new advanced materials is what actually give technological innovation. And the classical way to design new materials is actually through experiments. And as we know, experiments is often quite expensive, slow, potentially hazardous, and require a significant amount of human expertise and intervention. So very recently, a new paradigm has emerged in the design of new advanced materials, which is rational design. This rational design refers to the use of computer simulations through the solution of quantum mechanical models in order to predict the properties of a material from its molecular structure. The idea is that if a mathematical model can reliably predict the properties of material, then everyone can use supercomputing to just efficiently search the space of possible molecules and their positions to construct materials that have the properties that they want, which is optimal. One of the most popular methods of rational design is density functional theory, or DFT, which is a computational quantum mechanical modeling method used to investigate the electronic structure of many body systems, in particular atoms, molecules, and condensed phase. This method actually has demonstrated predictive power for many diverse materials. DFT itself attempts to find approximate solutions to the Schrödinger equation of n interacting electrons moving in an external electrostatic potential. However, there are serious limitations of this approach, which is the computational effort and the cost grows very rapidly with the increasing n, or its interacting electrons. So if there is a lot of electrons in a particle, then it will just become impossible to calculate that particle with DFT. And during the past decade, as a solution, machine learning potentials, or MLP, trained on accurate first principles and quantum chemistry methods, such as DFT, have become more widely used. Because carefully constructed MLPs can be as accurate as their first principles reference method, but with just a fraction of those computational cost. One of the most popular MLP variant is the high dimensional artificial neural network, or we used to call it ANN, which is initially introduced by Behler and Parinello in 2007. So the general idea behind machine learning in this context is to automate the model discovery step. Instead of fitting the parameters of a predefined model to reference data, an appropriate model that is able to describe the feature space of the input data shall be automatically determined and parameterized by the machine learning method. So actually the ANN method is used to train the model, or we call it ANN potential, and not directly to predict the material properties. This model, or ANN potential, is trained to learn the relationship between atomic structure and energy from a set of training reference. And once the model has successfully learned the structure-energy relationship, it can essentially be used as a black box to predict the energies of previously unknown structures on the condition that the those new structures are sufficiently similar to the ones in the trained reference sets. And one more note is once ANN potentials have been trained, the computational cost does not scale with the number of data points used for training. So the training sets can be as large as necessary to sample the relevant and potentially diverse chemical and structural space, which is contrary with DFT. And for this research, I am using a Fortran library, which is called Atomistic Energy Network, or ANET. ANET itself is a software package for the construction and usage of atomic interaction potentials based on artificial neural networks. ANET offers tools to train ANNs to the potential energy of atomic reference structures. And how does this ANET library works? There are actually only 3 steps, which is generate, train, and predict. Generate is where the library will generate a training set based on suitable reference structures and the computation of their energy. And then it will move on to training phase, training step, which will train the ANN potentials using previously defined architectures and activation function types for the hidden network layer. And finally, once an ANN potentials have been trained, it can be used in the same way as conventional atomistic potentials to predict structure of energies via their analytic gradients, such as atomic forces. And for this early stage of research, I am using a material called titanium dioxide. Titanium dioxide is a material which has a wide range of application, including paint, sunscreen, and food coloring. Titanium dioxide naturally has 3 polymorphs, which is rutile, anatase, and brookite. And there are also phases which only occur on high pressure, which is columbite and badolite. And why did I choose this titanium dioxide? It's because this material has been extensively studied both experimentally and computationally. And ANET actually also provide the training set for this material, so I can use it just like without calculating the DFT first. So here is the example of the result of prediction of atomistic materials using ANN compared to DFT for rutile and anatase particle. Here are DFT results are represented by line and ANN results are represented by square. As you can see, the energy predicted by ANN method is actually quite similar with DFT method, even when there is a strain acting on the materials. And here is the comparison of ANN to DFT for badolite and columbite atoms. You can also see here that the energy predicted by DFT, which is presented by the line, and ANN, which is represented by triangle, is pretty close. So it can actually say that the result prediction of ANN is similar to DFT. So the conclusion of my research is, in my opinion, ANN for the future can replace DFT method to predict material properties, while ANN method might not be as accurate as DFT, but from the prediction result for titanium dioxide is actually quite similar. And ANN also has the advantage of having much faster execution time and much less computational cost. That's it. That is all from me. Thank you for listening. Is there any question?
Is there any question from the audience to Fadil's presentation? We have time for 3 questions. Somebody's writing on the... Thank you.
Yes,
Okay, is there any question
got to
from the...
translate.
Is there any question from the audience for Fadil? So how long is your training time in order for you to get a maximum prediction on the material?
Okay, so I have trained and predict for this titanium dioxide, and it only the time needed is only 1 day for training and 1 day for predicting. While my senior, which is in SM master right now, he actually used DFT for predicting the materials, and it takes longer, about a week actually. So it's pretty faster than DFT.
Okay, and the amount of data for the training program is how much? Is it more than one gigabytes, or is it a big data or a relatively small data?
For this, actually, it's still quite big, but not that big. Like,
well, big data is about 1 tera.
There are no. There are actually only 1,000 samples, and it only took 10 megabyte. Not really big.
Oh, so it's basically just a typical data.
Yes, because it's
so
still
that,
in early stage of my research.
Okay. Okay, thank you for your answer, so that we can move on to the Edgar Rafi's question for you.
First, thank you, Fadil, for the presentation. And my question is related to the question before. Would you prioritize training time or the accuracy of the model, even if it takes a longer time to train the model? I think that's it.
It actually depends on the use case, because sometimes, as I already said in the first slide, there are actually a constant quest of new advanced materials, and if to predict the material properties need like about 1 week for just one materials, it will longer the time to find that new materials. While if you already know what you want to research and really want to focus on that, you really need to use the DFT and the accuracy of that method. Actually, that is my answer.
Okay, thank you, Fadil,
okay,
for the answer.
Okay, any more question for Fadil? We have time for 2 quick questions.
I want to ask questions, sir.
Yes, please.
Fadil, why do you specifically choose this topic instead of any other material topic?
Okay, I will answer it honestly, because this topic is actually my supervisor topic, which has been provided, and I join him. I just join him, and not research for other topic.
Okay, thank you so much.
Where can you go? Class, if you are asked the same question as Hansel's asked previously, don't tell the audience that this is due to the fact that my advisor asked me to do this work. Okay, so whenever you got chance to present in Indonesian or in English, whenever people ask you about why do you choose this topic, you don't answer it with because my advisor asked me to do it. Okay, so that is basically not a trick questions, but a second, but it's kind of a diversion question where the answer is actually you need to describe to the audience what are the advantages or what is the main or the positive points about artificial neural network in the study. Basically, what is the capabilities that any other method doesn't have, and what are the limitation and also the potential of this method, so that that is basically the answer. You describing about the advancement or the plus signs about that artificial neural network. Okay, so please remind yourself that whenever you ask about the question, especially reason why you choose this topic, please don't answer it because my advisor asked me to do it, because that's actually not the answer. Okay, thank you,
sorry,
Fadil,
sir.
for giving us. No problem. This is just as I said in the class also, because this is a chance for you to practice your presentation, so that I should give you some kind of a suggestion and advice to you regarding handling the question and answering questions, especially during presentation, so that you can learn from this class for your actual defense or for your actual presentation in annual conferences or any of today, which is Joel.
Can you hear my voice, sir?
Yes, we can
Okay.
hear your voice. Okay,
So
Joel is going to talk about handwriting recognition with convolutional neural network. So it's basically kind of related to the previous presentation, but now we are going to use the neural network for recognizing handwriting pattern. Okay, Joel, time is yours.
yes. Good morning, everyone, and Sarhari Mahardika. Firstly, let me introduce myself. My name is Joel 102-17046. I am really thankful for this opportunity because I get to present a research that is entitled Handwriting Recognition with Convolutional Neural Network. Before we go into the presentation, I would like to show you the outline of this session. First, we will take a PowerPoint introduction where we will discuss about research background, problem formulation, research objective, and the research scope. Moving on into the literature review, where we will learn more about convolutional neural network, or CNN abbreviated, and its architectures. Next is the research methods, where I will discuss about data generation, data pre-processing, CNN preparation, and CNN training. And lastly, I will present you the result of the trained CNN and the conclusion of this research. Okay. And in this digital era, human life is not complete with the word of digitalization. But pen and paper is still used to write data, memos, and things that we need to take note upon. Changing the handwritten text into digital form can be a problem where it is a tedious task where because we need to type it letter by letter, and it is so time consuming, so it is an inefficient task. Unfortunately, computer cannot directly read pictures like humans do. As we can see on the picture on the right, we can instantly recognize letter by letter and word by word, but it is not the same with computer, where computer has the capability to read only the pixels by pixels. So the computer cannot see pictures like humans do. One study to make it possible is computer vision, specifically using convolutional neural network, which mimics humans' brain to recognize images, hence can be an answer to this problem. The problem formulation is how to implement CNN on translating handwritten text images into digital form. And what is the accuracy of the CNN on recognizing handwritten text images? The objective of this research is to apply and measure the performance of different types of CNN architectures to recognize handwritten text images. In this particular research, I will be using ResNet 50, GoogleNet, and also Inception ResNet version 2. And the second objective is to obtain the best performing network architectures on recognizing handwritten images. On this particular research, my own handwriting was used, so it is exclusive for recognizing my handwriting only. If we want to recognize other handwriting, I need to have the other person handwriting data. So the machine can learn other person handwriting. And the research was done in MATLAB IDE, and all the networks are obtained from MATLAB Toolbox. So it may differ when it is comments in different programming languages. So here is convolutional neural network. CNN is a deep learning algorithm which can take in input image and assign the features and able to differentiate one features or classify one features from another. Preprocessing that are required in CNN is much lower compared to other classification algorithm, while in primitive methods, filters are hand-engineered with enough training. CNN have the ability to learn these filters or characteristics. The architecture of CNN is analogous to that the connectivity of a neuron in the human brain and was inspired by the organization of visual cortex. The picture on the right is a simple illustration about how the CNN works, from inputting the image, extracting the features, and also finally producing the corresponding layers. In this case, we input the image of the number of 2, and it produced the label of 2. Here is a brief illustration about how CNN developed over the years. The pioneer of CNN is LeNet 5, which was produced in 1998. And for this research, GoogleNet or Inception version 1, and ResNet was produced in 2015, and Inception ResNet was produced or introduced in 2017. So here is GoogleNet. GoogleNet consists of 144 layers and was built in 2015. It requires 224 image size times, it requires the input image size of 224 times 224 pixel. Please take a look at the layer of 142, where this architecture was pre-built to classify 1,000 classes. But in this particular research, we only need to classify 26 classes, which is the alphabetical letters. So we need to configure it in the CNN preparation. And this is ResNet. It was built in the same year on 2015 and consists of 177 layers. And it requires the same input image size. And this is Inception ResNet version 2, which was built on 2016 and published in 2017. It consists of 824 layers, so it has more layers than the previous architectures, and it requires. Sorry, why does it move on its own? And it requires the input image size of 299 times 299 image size. Okay. And moving on into the research method, the data that are used on this research is obtained with cell phone cameras, and 26 images were taken with each contain 30 alphabetical letter. The picture on the right is a sample of the raw obtained data, As we can see, there are many noise, such as the background pictures and shadows. So we need to do some pre-processing first. Although the CNN requires minimal pre-processing, but we need it to run as fast as it could with the best data as possible. Here is the data pre-processing. On the right is the pre-processed data. And to make it possible to produce individual letters like this, each letter on the raw image will be cropped, denoised, and also segmented. On the segmentation, the objects that are observed will be removed from the background. So it will not have some background issues noise. And for the preparation part for the CNN, building, training, and validation dataset will be held. So as I have tell you, I have 26 images and 30 image letters. So we have 780 images, and 35% will be divided into the training dataset, and validation dataset is the 65%. And as I have previously mentioned, each of the networks are designed to classify 1,000 classes, but we only need to classify 26 classes, so we need to change the layers. So it will classify 26 classes. And also finally, the data will be resized, so it will match the required input image size. Okay, the networks are trained with the learning rate of 0.003, and the maximum epoch is 6 iteration. So why 6 iteration? Because less epoch is less accurate, and more epoch is basically useless because it will going forth from 90 to 100% accuracy. In the training the networks, accuracy for each epoch is plotted for each network. So here is the result. This is the result for GoogleNet. GoogleNet will reach the final validation accuracy of 96.63% and takes 1 minute and 26 seconds for the training session. Moving on into the Inception ResNet, the final validation accuracy is 88.22%, and it takes 15 minutes and 16 seconds to finish the training session. And finally is ResNet 50. ResNet 50 has the validation accuracy of 98.32% and takes 2 minutes and 29 seconds to finish the training session. So the conclusion is ResNet 50 has the best validation accuracy. GoogleNet has the fastest training duration. Inception ResNet version 2 has the longest training duration and the lowest validation accuracy. Remembering that Inception ResNet version 2 has the most layer that is different from ResNet 50 and GoogleNet. And also all the trained data is tested with 10 test images, and all the data can recognize all the test images perfectly. So it has 100% accuracy tested on the test data. So that's all for my presentation. If you have any question, please don't hesitate to ask. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Yoel. We have time for 3 questions for Yoel.
May I ask a question?
Yes,
please go ahead.
So I noticed the trend that as time goes on, there are more and more machine learning model that use more and more layers. Do you think that as we use more layer, it will be more and more accurate? Or do you think there will be a limit to how much layer we can use?
Okay, thank you, Kevin, for the question. For what I have researched, more layers means more features that will be extracted. And for this kind of research, that is character recognition, I think it requires less features to be extracted, like shapes, and we don't need the color. So I think different architectures with a different layers number or or different layers amount is needed to be find the optimum architectures for every kind of research. So for this particular test or research, the more layer that is used on the CNN model doesn't mean it is better on learning the model. So I think we need to find the optimum architecture for each kind of research. Does that answer your question?
Oh, yes. Thank you for the answer.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, more question for Yoel? Okay. Okay, Yoel. I have a. Oh, okay. Hansel, do you have a question for Yoel, Hansel?
Oh yes.
Okay,
about the accuracy on the test data.
Yes.
Do you think the result could be better if it is not overfitted, like 100% accuracy?
Okay. Thank you, Hansel, for the question. Maybe I will explain overfitting. Overfitting usually happen on the training session, not on the testing. The test session. I will use different kinds of images or different handwriting, and I will put it on test. So for 10 images, for example, I have 10 images and it produced, and I tested all of them, and 8 of them are right on the point. For example, I inputted an image of the letter of A, and it produced the prediction. This is the letter of A, so it is correct. And if it is wrong, for example, I input the image of M, and it produced the label of E, for example, it's wrong, right? So it will have less accuracy. So this 100% accuracy means that all of the tested data that are inputted in the network, all of them can be recognized by the trained network. Okay, you're welcome. Thank you for the question.
Okay, the last question. Is there any
I have
remaining question? Okay, from Christopher. Okay,
yes, hello.
Go ahead.
I'm Crystal. Yoel, I have a question for you about your about the models that you were using.
Yes.
Can we use it for cursive text? Do you think this is can identify cursive or not? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question, Christopher. For the cursive, as far as I know, the cursive is to, for example, like this. Let me show you. Okay, for cursive, it is like this picture, and we want to find one by one, like this is A, and we need it to crop it one by one. So I think for cursive method in this digital time, in this particular time, I think we do not need CNN to produce the on recognizing. Sorry, for cursive method, because cursive method only detects and divides the letters on the image one by one. On my research, I also use cursive to divide and to divide and also auto locate the letters, so it will produce the letters like this. So I think the CNN models is not needed to commence the cursive method. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it's quite answered my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question.
Okay, so thank you everybody for participating in the presentation session for today. I guess there will be a lot of questions, especially on the matters on handwriting recognition, because I do have questions related to how can we apply this to detect ancient script, for example, from 200 or 300 years ago, because in the past they use different type of paper, different type of ink, etc., and so on, so that probably some important or historical treatise or a script is written, not printed, but with handwriting. So how can we preserve it in a digital form is one of the challenges that we could have in order to preserve the historical record that we have. But nevertheless, I would like to thank you for all presenters of today. We're going to meet again on Thursday for our final session. Please remember to fill in your assessment sheet and also to send or upload your presentation file into the Google Drive folder that I already provide you in the LMS. If the size of your PPT is too big, then you can convert it into PDF otherwise. So thank you all. We'll meet again on Thursday for the final session. Thank you. Okay, I could stop.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.